Oscar is an overpowered prince who cannot have kids because his family jewels were cursed. However, when he learns that a freaky witch can cure him by offering her kitty, he asks her to move in with him so she can get piked every night and given royal babies. It all starts with Oscar sneaking out of the castle with his subordinate Lazar to look for the witch who can help lift Oscar's curse. Soon after, they reach the Tower of Azure Moon, which can grant any wish upon completion. But Lazar warns Oscar that climbing the tower is very dangerous. Despite his warning, Oscar confidently steps in and takes the stairs, where he is greeted with an impossible mathematical question. After solving it, Oscar heads to the next level and reveals that the last person who cleared the tower was his great-grandfather, Regis. Soon after, they reach a room with 2 gargoyle statues, and since Lazar has played Dark Souls 1, he knows they will come to life. As expected, the gargoyles attack him, but he manages to take them down with ease. However, the floor begins to collapse, and Lazar is stuck on the other side. Oscar wants to save him, but he's too late, and Lazar plummets to his death. Oscar has no choice but to move ahead, so he reaches the top floor, where a cutie named Tinashe asks him to take a seat. As she serves him tea, Oscar asks why she looks bussin' despite being centuries old, and she says her body stopped aging long ago. He then introduces himself to the witch, and she then summons her familiar Latola, who informs him that Lazar is sleeping outside. He asks what happened to the challengers who die in here, and she says no one has ever died inside the tower, and anyone who fails a challenge is sent to the ground floor with their memories altered. She then asks why he's come here, and Oscar reveals he has been cursed by the Witch of Silence. When he was young, she cursed both him and his father to ensure they could never have kids, but he doesn't know why. He tried everything over many years, and coming here was his last option. Tinashe appraises him and realizes that he isn't cursed, but rather affected by a variant of a blessing. Turns out the blessing tries to protect any unborn baby inside the womb, but the magic is too strong for any mother to bear. Since she can't remove the blessing, she suggests he find a shoddy that can take 11 inches and bear the burden of strong magic. Oscar, being a certified Rizzler, asks Tinashe if she can withstand it, and she casually says yes. At this, he tells her his wish for clearing the tower is for her to marry him.
Yes! Yes! Yes!
But she freaks out and tells him no. When Oscar keeps insisting, she decides to erase his memories and send him back. However, she notices him carrying the royal sword Acacia, which has super high magic resistance. They decide to talk it out, and Oscar says if she isn't gonna marry him, she should at least live with him in Farsis for 1 year, after which she can return to the tower. After she agrees, they head outside and Oscar introduces her to Lazar as the witch's pupil, who will live with them and help remove the curse. On the way, he asks Tinashe to reconsider making Nepo babies with him, but she refuses yet again. A few days later, the duo is at the castle, where Tinashe casts a spell on Oscar that will negate all the physical and magical attacks on him. She further reveals that this spell cannot be broken as long as she is alive, so he's basically become a raid boss now. Immune to others, Oscar is still weak against poison and psychological attacks, so she asks him to be careful. Oscar once again asks if she would like to marry her, and he sighs in disappointment. Later, while helping Lazar carry books, she asks if Oscar has anyone in the bloodline who could become his successor. He tells all the babies from the royal palace mysteriously vanished 15 years ago, so Oscar is now the youngest member of the royal bloodline. She then notices 2 mages, Cap and Sylvia, lighting up chandeliers using magic. But when one of them suddenly falls, Tinashe uses a spell to make it slow fall. Cap notices that she didn't even use an incantation and reveals she's the pupil Prince Oscar brought from the witch's tower. She then sees General Alls and Muradina sparring outside and learns that Alls is one of the best fighters the kingdom has to offer. However, Oscar is even stronger than him, which explains how he conquered the tower. Tinashe decides to challenge Alls for a sparring match, and he is so impressed that he invites her to join him. After she turns him down, he joins Muradina, who is wary of having a witch's pupil roaming the castle walls. Later, Litola appears to check up on Tinashe and notes that she seems to be enjoying her time in Farsis. She then tells her that something important has come up, so Tinashe visits Oscar's office and informs him that she will be leaving for 3 days. Having formed a contract with her, Oscar demands to know where she's headed, and she tells him she's going to the magical lake in Druza. Lazar freaks out and explains that that's the place where a demonic beast was sealed 70 years ago. Tinashe says some disturbance has been observed in the lake recently, and she's off to find who is responsible for it. When Oscar says, "Oh, come with him," she reminds him of his duties as the crown prince of this kingdom, only to learn that Druza falls under Farsis' jurisdiction. As she gives him 1 hour to prepare, a mage named Vald and his partner Miralis wait for her to show up at the magical lake. While waiting with the rest of the squad, Tinashe is approached by Sylvia, who is excited to see a small dragon on her shoulder. Soon after, Oscar arrives and informs the rest that the mission will be dangerous. He then places his hand on Tinashe's head and tells them to do what she says. As they use the teleporter, Tinashe recalls the last time she was here and realizes everyone she knew back then is now dead. Everyone she once knew passed on, yet she has been stuck in the same place for centuries because this is the path she chose for herself. While she's daydreaming, Oscar looks at her and realizes she's truly stunning. As they teleport to the fortress near the border, they spot a dark cloud forming over the lake and decide to check it out. On the way, Tinashe explains that Druza launched an invasion in Farsis 70 years ago by unleashing a beast, but it went berserk and attacked everyone in sight. In the end, the Witch of the Azure Moon sealed it in the lake, but its miasma poisoned the land around it. As they walk through the thick fog, Tinashe notices someone's presence and calls them out. Just then, an old Druza mage shows himself and exposes Tinashe's cover as the Witch of Azure Moon. Tinashe recalls she slayed the mage's master 70 years ago, so when she offers to give him the same treatment, he decides to skedaddle.
Why are you running? Why are you running?
However, he secretly casts a spell behind them, and despite the chaos, Oscar manages to protect the others. Tinashe takes a swing at the old mage, only to learn that he was a mere illusion placed here to ambush them. She then sees Sylvia struggling to heal Lazar's wound, so she helps them with her extraordinary healing magic. However, everyone turns their attention to the fact that Tinashe is actually a witch, and even though Sylvia welcomes her, Tinashe understands why others are now wary of her. She decides to follow the mage alone because she fears he will undo the seal, but Oscar grabs her and declares that he is coming with her. She tells him to be more delicate if he wants to become a king, but Oscar says he cannot let her get her hands dirty for him. She calls him stubborn and reminds him that he is allowed to use her for his troubles for 1 year. Besides, the weight of his burdens is nothing to her, because she has dealt with much bigger problems. She also asks him to relax a little and promises that no matter where she goes, she will always return to him as long as she is bound by the contract. Hearing this, Oscar lets go of her hand and allows her to go ahead alone, prompting her to summon her dragon. He then tells her they will get married once she returns, but Tinashe strictly rejects him and flies away. Meanwhile, the Druza mages are trying to put a control spell on the beast, but when they learn that Tinashe is on her way, they skip that step and proceed to destroy the seal. Seconds later, Tinashe appears and ends everyone except the old mage. She then breaks the seal on her own and decides to finish the job she couldn't finish 70 years ago. The two of them engage in a fierce battle until Tinashe starts aura farming and finishes the beast off, but not before it takes a bite out of her. Soon after, Tinashe's dragon brings her back to the fortress, and later Oscar learns from Sylvia that she's perfectly safe. She visits her room to check up on her, but finds her looking like a snack. She throws a pillow at him for coming in without permission, and after she changes up, she tells him her organs were damaged, but she's okay now. Oscar then bows to Tinashe, thanking her for risking her life to save Farsis. A few days later, Sylvia brings tea for Tinashe, only to see her cutting her hair with a sword. Seeing this, Sylvia decides to give her a proper haircut, and Tinashe asks her why she's not scared of her. Sylvia admits witches terrify her, because she heard 5 of them destroyed a whole country in one night, but Tinashe looks like she destroy hearts, not nations. She then asks Tinashe if there is anything she is scared of, and Tinashe admits that although there were things she could not handle in the past, she's lived long enough to handle everything. The only thing she doesn't like right now is being forced to bed in Oscar's stubbornness. Later, Oscar introduces Tinashe to his father, Kevin, and the generals as his soon-to-be bride, but she makes it clear that she's only here to lift the curse. Kevin asks if she can really do it, and she says she's doing her best and will soon make a breakthrough. When Oscar passes a sarcastic comment, she starts arguing with him, and Kevin is amused to see his son with no shawties finally land some cake. Meanwhile, Vault and Miralis are discussing how Tinashe defeated the beast, which allowed them to steal its core. Just then, they are approached by a white-haired mage named Lann, who has come to clean up after Tinashe. Vault reminds him that Tinashe is looking for him, but he says he'll meet her when the time is right. Vault says he's treated her with such arrogance in every history, but when Lann asks what he means by that, Vault refuses to elaborate. As they leave, Vault says his job is to ensure important events occur as they should, but Lann starts attacking him, saying he won't let him meddle with someone so important to him. Vault creates a teleportation circle under Miralis so she can escape, and while she teleports away, the mage incinerates Vault. Meanwhile, inside the bioforest, Oscar and Lazar are investigating the mysterious deaths of 9 villagers, and as usual, Lazar is worried about Oscar's safety. He further says that Tinashe will be furious if she finds out, and since she will know where they are if anything touches his defense barrier, Oscar must dodge all attacks. Just then, Lazar spots a large pearl growing on a plant, but when he tries to investigate it, similar plants spring out and try to choke him. Oscar quickly frees him, and after realizing these plants are responsible for the deaths, he rushes to stab the big one. However, it starts raining poisonous acid everywhere, and Lazar gets caught in the middle of it. As Oscar rushes to his rescue, he hears a voice and looks up to see a cute redhead with jiggly melons sitting on a tree branch. Later, Lazar wakes up on a couch inside a cozy house and sees Oscar sitting at the dining table. Soon after, the redhead woman arrives and introduces herself as Lucrezia, the witch of the Forbidden Forest. She then notices the defensive barrier around Oscar and immediately realizes it was Tinashe who cast it. She then asks how Tinashe is doing, revealing that she's known her since she became a witch. Oscar admits she has left the tower for now to become his protector, and Lucrezia is surprised to learn that he cloned her tower. She then asks what contract he formed with Tinashe, and Lazar quickly reveals that Oscar asked her to marry him. However, she swiped left on him and decided to become his protector instead. Lucrezia says it will be hard to pipe Tinashe because she is a spirit sorcerer and doesn't need a man. Oscar asks for an explanation, so she reveals that spirit sorcerers are unique in a way that they must keep their V card intact. If they mingle with others, their spirit becomes impure, and it becomes much harder for them to perform spirit magic. But Tinashe is so strong that getting backshots once in a while won't affect her much. She even offers to make him a potion that will make all the hot milfs in his area hungry for his sausage. But Oscar refuses the offer. When she stands up, Oscar feels something strange and reaches for his sword, but she cryptically says she is not a fighter and he should spare her life. Since she saved Lazar's life with an antidote, he begs Oscar to leave, and the man agrees. Later, while he's working in his office, Tinashe asks Lazar if they faced any trouble, and he lies that everything went smoothly. While they are talking, Oscar suddenly gets up and is about to leave when she asks him if he's okay. He sternly says that he's fine before walking out the door, leaving her confused. Later, Oscar wakes up in his room and heads into the hall, where he sees Tinashe. Noticing that something is wrong with him, she meets up with Lazar to ask if Oscar is sleeping enough. When Lazar says yes, she inquires if he's fallen in love with someone, making him question if she's jealous. Later, she tells Cav, Sylvia, and another mage named Gowan that Oscar might be in love, because his life force has been fluctuating. She also mentions that she smelled a woman's perfume on him, but she suddenly realizes the truth and clutches her fist in anger, which causes the whole room to tremble. She immediately storms into Oscar's office to ask if he has met Lucrezia, and after he confirms it, she scolds him for going alone, knowing that he is weak to psychological attacks. She tells him that Lucrezia had put a spell on him that makes him have sussy dreams, so she could steal his life force, and if she hadn't noticed, he would have died in a week. The curse has already affected his life force, so Tinashe decides to lift the curse tonight while he sleeps. That night, once he falls asleep, he finds himself walking in a gloomy castle. Eventually, he arrives in a bright room and sees Tinashe sitting on the bed. After embracing him, he suddenly pins him down and starts choking him, only to reveal that he is not in control of his body. He ends up choking her to death and suddenly wakes up from his nightmare. The real Tinashe reveals that the curse is now lifted, but he's angry with the fact that he had to take her life in a dream. Tinashe reminds him that he might have to do that in real life as well someday, but before he can say anything, she flies away. She then visits Lucrezia and scolds her for doing this, but Lucrezia says she only did it because she wanted to see her. Turns out, she had taken a sample of Oscar's blood and milk earlier, and she wanted to give them to Tinashe so she could test her theories on how to break the curse. She also tells her that she did not make a copy of her in Oscar's dreams, but rather, she appeared there because of his own desires. She also advises her to consider Oscar's feelings, because he genuinely cherishes her. The next day, she goes to his room and struggles to apologize, so he pulls her closer until she's sitting in his lap. He then embraces her, and she hugs him back, apologizing for what she put him through last night. Later, as Oscar is sparring with the trainees, Alls decides to join as well and is defeated easily. Oscar then asks Tinashe if she would like to duel him, but she immediately turns him down, as there is nothing to gain from it. However, when Oscar says she can even use magic, she realizes he's got nuts bigger than Jupiter to propose this challenge. She then agrees to the duel on the condition that he uses his special sword, Acacia. As the duel begins, Oscar deflects her attacks with his sword, but the next thing he knows, she's won and is now healing his injured arm. Meanwhile, Alls and Miradina discuss the duel, talking about how, unlike other mages, Tinashe uses her magic in close combat. They also noticed that she was smiling through the whole fight, as if she was trying to teach Oscar how to fight her. Once she's done healing, Oscar mentions how she only used weak spells and wonders if she went easy on him, but she says stronger spells require a lot of focus, and she wouldn't stand a chance if she resorted to those. Oscar then places his hand on her cheek and sternly tells her that he does not want to end her. He then asks if she wants to die, but she says she has some things to do, including lifting the curse on him. Oscar once again asks her to become his wife, but she rejects him and walks away. Later, Oscar finds out that a convoy from Kuskal has arrived and wants to meet Tinashe, which confuses him because he's puzzled about how others learned about her. He heads to the throne room, where he meets a man named Kagar, who wishes to talk to the Azure Moon Witch. Oscar strictly tells him that they do not have any witches here and asks how he got this idea. Kagar then calls Tinashe by her other name, Aedi, which piques Oscar's curiosity. Meanwhile, Tinashe looks for Oscar in his office, only to run into Miralise working as a maid. She tries to play off as a normal person, but Tinashe can feel her aura, though she tells her not to worry about it. Later, Lucrezia visits her in the palace and asks her why she's teaching Oscar how to fight against her. She says Oscar is strong enough as it is, and making her stronger will only prove troublesome later. Tinashe takes a seat, unsure of why she felt like fighting him, and realizes she was only doing it because she wants to know there is someone who can end her if things go south. Just then, Lazor and Oscar show up, and once they confirm that Tinashe also goes by the name Aedi, they take her to the throne room. Once there, she tells Kagar to stop addressing her with her other name and then asks why he is here. The man tells her that their nation was founded to give mages their rights after they were persecuted in Teiri, and his main goal is to help them improve their skills. He wants her to come to Kuskal and lend her knowledge to expand even further, but she strictly tells them she won't abide by their request because they have not climbed her tower. After she sends him off, Kagar becomes frustrated and decides to do something to separate Tinashe from Oscar using Meridiana. Meanwhile, Tinashe asks Lucrezia if she knows about this new nation of Kuskal, but she tells them that she's noticing strange magical fluctuations approaching them. Just then, Meridiana arrives and attacks Tinashe, but Oscar quickly blocks her. Meridiana starts spewing hate and tells her to leave the country, and Tinashe calmly says this isn't the first time she's faced people who hate her for no reason whatsoever. Oscar pulls her into a hug to comfort her, and Lucrezia explains that Meridiana is under a mind-controlling spell. While she removes the spell, Oscar asks Tinashe when the last time she cried, and she says she doesn't remember. The next day, she calls Oscar into her towers and reveals she's sent her familiar to look into Kuskal. She then produces her weapon and asks him to spar with her. After the duel, she heals his injuries and explains that she wants him to become stronger so that in the future, he has all the paths available to him, and he can choose the one he likes. For the next few days, Oscar continues to get his lights knocked by Tinashe, but with each day, he becomes a little stronger. After losing another battle to her invisible, he falls asleep on top of her and wakes up in Tinashe's personal room.
Magic.
As he steps outside, he realizes he's at the top of the tower where he first met her. Tinashe makes him tea, but when he complains it's too sweet, she forces him to drink it anyway. She then tells him he also possesses magical powers, but he can't use them as long as he wields that sword. However, she believes he can still see her magic and asks him to focus harder tomorrow. Later, she creates a ring of fire around him and tells him to observe the flow of magic through it. Oscar tries swinging like a monkey, but it has no effect on the fire. By concentrating, he sees the flow of magic and follows it to a small magic circle, and by attacking it, he destroys the whole ring. Just then, a few mages arrive to challenge the tower and assume Oscar and Tinashe are also here for the same reason. After Tinashe clears up the misunderstanding, she tells them she will grant their wish if they defeat Oscar. She then tells Oscar to go all out because no one can die here, and in a few seconds, he defeats all of them. Tinashe then reveals this is the end of his training, but when he asks if he is stronger than her now, she refuses to elaborate on it. Just then, her familiar returns with intel on Kuskal, and she later reveals that around 200 mages and sorcerers are gathered in the country. The average for each nation is about 30, which leads Oscar to believe they might start a war. They have also chosen a monarch for themselves who is not related to the former lord, so Oscar asks Tinashe to keep a close eye on them. Just then, Alls brings the news that General Eddard has passed away, and the castle waves black flags to mourn his loss. During the funeral, Miralise sheds some tears and reveals that he was the one who led her into the castle and treated her with kindness. Oscar then reveals that Eddard trained Alls in him after he was cursed, and even helped him get over the loss of his mother. Later, Alls discusses the possibility of Oscar's bloodline dying out, but Oscar says that can be prevented if Tinashe just lets him hit it from the back.
You naughty.
She rejects him again, saying he has 6 months left in the contract, and they will figure something out. Elsewhere in the city, Miralis confronts Kakar, saying that his king ended someone she loved before summoning the beast that eats him alive. Later, Lann, the white-haired mage from earlier, carries Tinashe in her arms, telling her that something good is about to happen, and he wants her to see it. She asks if it is important, and he says it is as important as she is. Afterward, Tinashe wakes up in her room with Oscar standing beside her and tells him she had a bad dream. Oscar says it's because she slept while sitting up and advises her to rest well before leaving the room. Later, as he's working in his office, Leonora informs him that the king wants to see him. He immediately heads to the throne room, where he sees the king's advisor seeking counsel from Tinashe. The king says they were discussing potential brides for him, and they now know that whoever bears his children must have a high magical resistance. Kevin had brought Tinashe here so she could appraise the girl in question and see if she met the requirements. Oscar demands to know who this mystery woman is, and Tinashe reveals they were considering Miralis as an option, though it would be barely possible for her. Tinashe also reveals she is from a bloodline of strong mages who pass down their abilities after death to their children. But her magic is sealed. Oscar is not happy that they did this behind his back, but Kevin scolds him, telling him to let others help him. Days later, Oscar asks Miralis who was responsible for sealing her magic, and she says it was her mother and Master Kumu. He then asks Lazar about Tinashe's whereabouts, stating that he hasn't seen her in 2 weeks. Turns out Tinashe is having girl time with Lucrezia, and she tells him the king has found a bride for Oscar. Tinashe says she is relieved that he has multiple options, as having her as his only choice would be sad. That evening, Leonora informs her that a challenger has appeared in the tower, which surprises her because she had closed the entrance. The challenger turns out to be Oscar, who barges through the front door, and Leonora reveals he's just set the new record for the fastest completion time. He then cups Tinashe's face and demands to know what she's hiding, and she says she's been working super hard to lift his curse. She then explains that even though he was cursed out of hatred, the spell itself is formed beautifully, which makes her realize that love and hate are opposite sides of the same coin. Oscar then notices from her silence that she is scared of something, so he asks her to make him dinner to ease her mind. A few days later, Alls meets Tinashe and tells him that even though Miralis claims General Eddard brought him here, they could not find anything among his belongings to support her claim. He even did a background check on Miralis, but was unable to find anything on her. Tinashe reveals that when she first came here, she appraised every woman in the palace, but no one was strong enough to bear Oscar's curse. However, since that time, Miralis has become the strongest woman in the whole kingdom, excluding the witches. They both conclude that she is definitely hiding something, but her true goal is unknown. Just then, they notice her walking by, and Alls asks Tinashe to pretend to kiss him so Miralis gets the wrong idea. They believe this will help them uncover Miralis's true goal, but what they don't realize is that Oscar saw them from the window and also got the wrong idea. Later, he calls Tinashe in his office to ask what she did all day, and Tinashe immediately notices that something is off. When she tries to touch his face, he puts a sealing ornament on her wrist and sternly says he didn't bring her here so she can get freaky with other men. He claims she's broken his trust, and now he will punish her. He then carries her in his arms, which reminds her of the dream she had, and when he places her on the bed, she starts to feel threatened. Oscar then, finally, drops the act and apologizes, stating that he was just trying to scare her. After Tinashe explains everything to him, he regrets his actions even more as he has already given a good beating to Alls for diddling with her girl. As she sits in his lap, he asks Tinashe not to hide anything from him in the future. She suspects that Miralis is being used by someone else, and she didn't want to ruin his chance of getting laid, so she did this in secrecy. After scolding her a little, he seeks an audience with the king and his advisors, and openly declares that he likes Tinashe, which is why he won't accept anyone else as his bride. He then turns to Miralis and tells her that he won't clap her in a million years. She will also be removed from her post, so they can do a background check on her. Just when he tells Lazar to take her away, Tinashe notices that the castle's barrier has dropped and tries to attack Miralis, but the ornament on her wrist prevents her from casting spells. Oscar tries to move her out of the way, but Miralis' spell scratches her and makes her blind in one eye. After the ornament is removed, Tinashe tells Oscar to stay out of it, because her blood has weakened his defensive barrier, As Miralise unveils her true face, Tinashe tells the others to leave so she can fight her head-on. Soon after, Miralise summons the beast, but since Tinashe can't properly fight with one eye, Oscar decides to support her. While he takes on the beast, Tinashe tells him to capture Miralise alive, so they can ask her what she is after. With that, Tinashe stays in the back while citing incantations, and Oscar takes the front, tackling the beast without his defensive barrier. After he uses Miralise's own spell to defeat the beast, Tinashe locks her in a void but lets her go on purpose so they can follow her. Soon after, they find her in the treasury holding a strange box, and Miralise tells her she will soon reunite with the delusion she has been searching for. She then tries to escape, but Tinashe stops her, and a red orb comes out of the box. Realizing she failed, she wishes she had more strength before her eyes start to glow. As she drops to her knees, Tinashe states that she is still alive, but her soul is gone at her own will. Oscar then picks up the strange orb and later tells Tinashe that her mother brought it here. Suddenly, he feels a sting in his head, but he ignores it and asks if she's changed her mind about marriage. She says she will never get married, but he makes her sit in his lap so she can feel the 11 inches and rethink. In that moment, Tinashe vows to make him forget her, because she does not want him to be harmed by the darkness that follows her. He then tells her to skedaddle because she has to sleep. But when he proposes they sleep together, she kicks him out of the room. Meanwhile, Lann, king of Kuskal, incinerates a village and declares that a new age is about to dawn on mankind, and the 4 great nations will be the first ones to fall. Later, as Tinashe perfects her spell, she learns about the attack from her familiar and wonders why Lann is on the move after 400 years. That night, she watches Oscar sleep and tells herself that she would rather shut off her emotions than let them control her. She believes love and hatred only lead to death, so she casts a spell on Oscar to protect him from such things. The next day, Oscar wakes up to see his body covered in red markings and Tinashe sleeping by his side. She soon wakes up and says she broke his curse by putting another curse on him. Before she leaves to get some sleep, he grabs her hand and thanks her. Later, Tinashe learns she has to attend King Kevin's birthday party and she is not too happy about it. Just then, Lazar enters the office with a message from Tadiri that Prince Roost won't be able to attend and has sent his sister, Cecilia, instead. Lazar also reveals that Kuskal mages have burned a city near the Tadiri border, making them wonder if this was revenge. Later, Tinashe tells Oscar that she wants to transfer the ownership of her dragon Nark, and he agrees to take it. She then jumps into his lap and kisses him, which leaves the guy amused. That night, Tinashe attends the ball with Oscar as her fake fiancé, but vows to crack his walnuts if he tries anything funny. There, Oscar has a run-in with the loud and obnoxious Cecilia, who apologizes that her brother couldn't make it. When Oscar says he is interested in knowing about the attacks, she tells him to flash his wee-wee before she tells him about their country's private affairs. Meanwhile, the king thanks Tinashe for lifting Oscar's curse, and she says she's happy Oscar can now have shawties ride his magic train. Just then, they both see Oscar leaving the hall with Cecilia and realize Bro is about to get his V-card swiped. Kevin tells her this could be avoided if she just marries him, but she refuses and heads out to get some fresh air. She then notices something strange and barges into Oscar's office to let him know. After making Cecilia leave, she uses her own blood to deactivate his barrier, and tells him that the people of this nation depend on him, so he must not compromise their safety by meddling with her. Just then, a door appears behind her and Lann steps out, declaring she's come to take her back. She hugs him in excitement and says she has been searching for him for centuries. Lann then invites him to the nation of Kuskal, where she will be the queen, and she happily accepts. Lann then decides to end Oscar since he possesses Acacia, but she gently tells him to let the man be, as he is not a threat. When Oscar asks why she's doing this, she says his curse is broken and their contract ends soon, which means she will no longer be bound to him. He pulls his sword out to attack Lann, but Tinashe defends him, even though they both know he can end her easily after all that training. Feeling something off, he lets Tinashe go with Lann, and the next day, he decides to visit Lucrezia. Before Lazar can stop him, Lucrezia shows up at the palace and reveals that every witch received an invite to Kuskal, but they all rejected it except Tinashe. Oscar demands to know the relationship between Lann and Tinashe, and Lucrezia says she has been searching for that man ever since she became a witch. Oscar notes that Lann felt like he was out of his mind, but Lucrezia believes Oscar is just jealous because she chose another man over him. Oscar says that he won't let the shoddy go so easily and decides to end Lann so she can have Tinashe back. Seeing his resolve, she agrees to tell him the truth but warns him that he might have to end Tinashe's life once he learns about her. She then tells him that Tinashe is from the Tolder family, much to everyone's shock. Sylvia adds that Tuldar was an empire that was destroyed overnight 400 years ago, which means Tinashe is from the royal family. Tinashe was a queen candidate back then, and in Tuldar, the next monarch was deciding through power rather than lineage. One candidate was chosen for both king and queen, and they were engaged to each other. However, in Tinashe's case, the king's son Lann was pretty weak compared to her, and while he knew he would become her escort, he still treated her with kindness. However, the palace was divided into people who wanted a different future for their nation, and the king was so stressed that he fell ill. This allowed the factions to start a civil war amongst them. But since Tinashe was guaranteed to take the throne, the people backing Lann came up with a plan. One night, Lann carried her into the cathedral while she was sleeping, and before she could process what was happening, he started stabbing her in the belly. He planned to stab her non-stop and have the mages heal her continuously, so he could bring out her true power and steal it. But things went south, and her power went berserk. While Lann escaped the chaos, a giant explosion leveled the entire country. And while Tinashe's wounds were healed, she had to lie there for 3 days in unbearable pain. Those who died had their souls taken, and the aftermath gave rise to 5 magical lakes across the world. After she finally woke up, Tinashe had become a witch, so she built a tower where Tuldar once stood, and ever since that day, she had been searching for Lann. Oscar then asks how Tinashe feels about him, and Lucrezia says she cares so much about him that she disabled his magic barrier before Lann came, so he lets him go. Despite hearing this, Oscar does not change his stance and vows to take Lann down so he can have Tinashe back. Meanwhile, the king tells Chief Mage Kumu and General Grandfort that Kuskal has demanded their surrender. They also learn that Tayuri sent an army of 10,000 to Kuskal, but they were all wiped out while Kuskal only lost around 50 mages. On top of that, several large cities in Tayuri were attacked at the same time, and thousands of people lost their lives. In the effective attacks, not even a single brick was damaged, but the entire population vanished. The person behind these attacks is believed to be Tinashe, and Kevin wants Oscar to put her down. Oscar agrees to help Tayuri, but he refuses to hurt Tinashe because he does not know the whole truth behind her actions. Kevin gets furious and tries to intimidate him, but Oscar stays calm and tells him he's already made up his mind, making Kevin realize he's just as stubborn as him. Seeing his resolve, Kevin agrees to let him do what he wants, but only if he takes the throne from him. Meanwhile, in Tayuri, Prince Roos reflects on the recent attack from Kuskal, when Tinashe suddenly appears and tells him that everything will end in 2 weeks, so he should hold off on attacking Kuskal. Roos refuses to listen and calls her a lowly mage, and she reminds him that this attitude of his people is the reason why they are getting attacked now. When she calls them violent fascists, she reminds him that his nation has committed crimes far worse than any mage, and he should study his own history before pointing fingers at others. Tinashe then warns her again before she leaves, but when he tries to stop her, she gives him a cold stare. Later, inside the Kuskal castle, Lann learns that the 4 great nations have colluded, but Lann says it's pointless as he creates a new map of the world. His men ask if a worldwide spell is even possible, and Lann says it is thanks to Tinashe. He says she has always been an excellent student, and because of that, she even surpassed him in strength. He then starts acting all weird, but quickly composes himself and promises to protect her. Later, she tells a mage named Renard that all the mages in the mainland are women because men's bodies are unstable when it comes to magic. Since Lann is also unstable, that explains why he sometimes acts differently. Meanwhile, Oscar is getting impatient in Tayuri because he's been here for 6 days without any progress. Sylvia believes Tayuri is still recovering from the crushing defeat at the Asdra Plains, but also still finds it strange that Roest hasn't moved his forces despite having the army of 4 nations at his disposal. Just then, he learns that people have started disappearing in farces as well, which makes him anxious. Soon after, Cecilia starts knocking on the door, so the others leave because they don't want to hear her yap. When he asks her why she's here, she suddenly wraps her arms around him and asks if the woman she saw at Kevin's birthday party was the Azure Moon Witch. Oscar tries to shake it off, but Cecilia says he can't lie to him because Tinashe visits her brother every night. When she says it's almost time, Oscar gets up and demands she take him to Riost's room. While Riest is waiting for Tinashe, Oscar barges into his room and demands to know what's going on. Before he can explain, Tinashe arrives with 2 other mages, but as soon as they see Oscar, they assume Riest has betrayed them and pull Tinashe back. A few days later, the Alliance finally prepares the forces to attack, and Oscar realizes the date Tinashe gave Riest must have passed. Just then, Lucrezia arrives with the news that everyone in the neighboring villages appears to have vanished. But in reality, Tinashe simply put a barrier around them so they can't be seen. She also reveals that Tinsha has no plan to protect herself, so Oscar must be her shield. As he breaks the news to other generals, Kuskal's chief mage Bartolos appears and teleports them all in the middle of nowhere, where hundreds of mages are waiting to ambush them. Lann appears as well, welcoming them to the ruins of the cathedral where he stabbed Tinashe. He then proposes to reshape the world to end cruelty, stating that whoever refuses to abide will receive divine punishment. He then summons Tinashe in a wedding dress, and she looks surprised to see Oscar here. She then takes a seat and allows Lann to use her power to summon the 5 magical lakes, each allowing him to control one part of the world. Once all lakes are summoned, he prepares to become a god, but Tinashe suddenly takes control of the spell, telling him that she had been waiting for this moment for 400 years. Only he knew how to summon the lakes all at once, but now she can use their power to set free the souls he has captured. Realizing he has been betrayed, Lann asks his mages to attack Tinashe, but her subordinates, Pamir and Renard, step up to defend her. Suddenly, Bartolos takes Pamir out and tries to hurt Tinashe too, but Oscar quickly protects her by deflecting the spell. Soon after, Lann orders his men to summon the demons, which turns the whole place into a battlefield. Amid the chaos, Bartolos tries to take Oscar down, but he meets his end at Oscar's sword. Following that, Tinashe uses her royal lineage to summon the 12 spirits of Toldar, commanding them to annihilate everything that has the intent to harm them. Within seconds, Lann's entire army is defeated, prompting him to retreat like a coward. However, Oscar follows him and asks what he felt when he stabbed Tinashe. Lann says he felt nothing because she is a mere tool, so Oscar decides to write him off the script. After he returns, Tinashe prepares herself for an execution by Oscar's hands, but she suddenly collapses in his arms. A week later, she wakes up with Oscar by his side, wondering why she is still alive. Oscar takes her in his arms, revealing that Prince Rius decided not to attack Kuskal and allow the mages to form an autonomous state. Oscar believes it was all thanks to the lectures Tinashe gave him, which makes her happy. Oscar then drops the bomb that they are now engaged, because that was the only way to bring her back alive from the battlefield. Some people wanted her dead, but when they learned she could join their side, they became greedy to use her powers and let her live. Despite acting confused at first, Tinashe quickly warms up to the idea and thanks him for saving her life. Later, Tinashe takes the Farse's mages to the Toldar treasury so they can bring valuables back to their country. While searching, she finds a blue orb similar to the one that was in Miraliz's possession and decides to bring it to the tower. Later, she visits the eastern fortress of Farses with Oscar, and General Edgard assures them that everything is stable here. When they spot children playing in the yard, Edgard reveals that a neighboring village was attacked by a group called Ito a year ago, and his men brought some survivors back, including some young ones and a woman named Elsa, who is the village chief's widow. After her husband died, Elsa lost her smile and now spends her days tending to the young ones. Elsa tells them a story about a beautiful young maiden who lived in a peaceful village but refused to marry any man. Then one day, some evil men attacked, burning their houses and hurting their people. But then, a man in a blue robe appeared and saved the girl by taking out the evil men. She was so moved by his strength that she decided to marry him, but the man turned her down and left without a trace. The boys are so motivated by the story that they decide to have a spar of their own so they can be like him. After they leave, Elsa notices that Tinashe was sitting behind her, listening to her story. When Tinashe asks, Elsa reveals that this story is based on true events, and the boy who saved the girl was actually her son, who came from the future. In the real timeline, the woman was captured and later gave birth to that same son, who then went back in time and prevented his mother from getting diddled with. The boy knew he would cease to exist if he saved her mother, but he did it anyway. She then asks Tinashe what she would do in his shoes, and she says she won't change the past. Later, Oscar and Tinashe are forced to take a single room, but she turns himself into a cat because this is the closest he will ever get to her kitty. That night, she suddenly starts making noises, and when Oscar wakes up, she explains that someone is casting a spell, which gives nightmares to others. She believes the caster is someone who never learned to control their magic, and the dream they are casting is about someone they hate. The following day, Oscar visits the border and sees that their neighboring nation, Yarda, has been turning into a desert lately. He tells Edgard to keep an eye on the area, but just as he turns to leave, he is ambushed by the Edo. Just then, a man steps up and introduces himself as Javi, the leader of Edo. He then reveals he is here to capture Elsa, because he failed to do so last year. So he challenges Oscar to a duel, with the winner taking Elsa. As they head to the nearby plateau, Javi reveals that this is a sacred ground that was visited by a god. Tinashe senses something is off about this place, but Oscar tells her not to worry as he will handle this with ease. Just then, Elsa shows up and is immediately terrified to see the man who took her husband's life. Soon after, the duel begins, and within seconds, Oscar takes his ability to goon to thick goth mommies by slicing his arm. After the duel ends, Javi sits there bleeding until Elsa suddenly runs to his aid. Oscar asks Tinashe to reattach his arm, but she says no and only stops the bleeding. Just then, a tornado surrounds Elsa and Javi, and Tinashe quickly teleports everyone away. A spirit-like being appears from the tornado, but Oscar defeats it by throwing his sword at it. However, a crack opens beneath their feet, and Tinashe falls into it, prompting Oscar to jump after her. They both fall into a body of water below, and she finally returns to her human form so they can explore the cave below. After some walking, they arrive at the Ido's sacred grounds, and their entire history is carved into the walls. While exploring, Tinashe sees the mural of a god and realizes it looks exactly like the thing that attacked them. According to the mural, the god sensed magic in mages and awoke, and Ido started worshipping it, because mages were considered evil at that time. They also figure that this supposed god is Iridirdia, the one true god of Tahiri. Before they proceed to the next room, Tinashe asks if he wants to be teleported out, but he refuses. She reminds him he doesn't have a cassia with him anymore, so he decides to use a sword he finds on the ground. As they proceed, they are attacked by a dark mist, and while Tinashe shields herself, Oscar steps in and sees Elsa on the other side. When she attacks him, Oscar realizes Elsa has been possessed by Iridirdia. When Tinashe joins him again, she says he is not affected by Iridirdia because, unlike her, his magic has been sealed. Oscar then asks if they can take out Iridirdia without hurting Elsa, only to learn that it's practically impossible. The only way for them to stop Iridirdia is by using a cassia, but that would surely end Elsa. Just then, Javi appears and says he won't let them hurt Elsa, so Tinashe calmly explains everything to him. She says any mage who approaches Iridirdia will lose their mind and harm others around them, and she cannot let that happen. After Javi agrees to stand aside, Tinashe turns to Oscar and asks him if she would take her life in case she becomes a danger to this world. He tells her he would if that's his last option, so she gently cups his face with a smile before kissing his forehead. She then uses magic to distract Iridirdia, while Oscar leaves to get a cassia. In the meantime, Tinashe tells Iridirdia that she is responsible for corrupting the minds of several mages, so on behalf of them, she will take it down today. Soon after, she manages to absorb the god in her body and tells Oscar to stab her in the belly, because that's the only way to end it. Oscar complies with her request, and later she wakes up in bed in good shape. She then decides to sleep in her human form, and when Oscar asks why, she says she trusts him to keep his willy tucked. However, Oscar tells her she will protect her before giving her a kiss, which leaves her blushing. Despite acting annoyed at first, she warms up to it, and Oscar is one step closer to entering her joyland.
Yeah, boy.
Later, Lucrezia scolds Tinashe for being so reckless as to get stabbed by a cassia, but she says it's not a big deal, and what matters is that it all worked out in the end. Noticing how much she trusts Oscar, she asks Tinashe what she will do now that the contract is about to end, but Tinashe avoids the question. Meanwhile, two Farsa's generals discuss how there's only 1 month left in the year, and they eagerly wish for Oscar to find himself a queen. They hope Tinashe agrees to his proposal because she will be the most beautiful queen in the history of Farsas. Just then, the anime version of Professor Rutonium, Norman, walks by and says he opposes the idea of a witch becoming their queen. The generals argue that Tinashe is a royalty of Toldar, but he says that the nation died centuries ago. Just then, Tinashe herself shows up with Pamira, and he tells her to her face that she is not welcome here. When he tells her to pack up and leave, Tinashe gently asks if he would like her to erase Oscar's memories. He tells her to do what she needs to before leaving, and while Pamela is enraged, Tinashe asks her to calm down because it's valid to be scared of a witch. That evening, as the two watch the sunset, Pamira tells Tinashe that she is way too forgiving, but Tinashe says that's not true, and she just remembers who she is. Pamira asks if she will really erase Oscar's memories, and Tinashe says she will do what's necessary. To her, it does not matter if Oscar forgets her, because she will always remember her in her heart, and what matters is that he lives a happy life. She further says that Oscar is even stronger than her, and he can carry out his mission alone, so there is no purpose to her life. However, Pamira calls it nonsense and yells at her, telling her to live among humans and die as one. As Tinashe embraces her, she says she wants her to find her happiness, but Tinashe says she is already happy. She then looks at the starry sky, admitting that the year went by really quickly. Following that, she visits Oscar in his room and calmly sits beside him, giving her an orb that has captured the essence of tonight's sky. After accepting the gift, he turns to Tinashe to ask why she looks so sad, but Tinashe says she's fine. He then quickly grabs her arm because he sensed she was about to cast a spell, and then asks if something is bothering her. She says she was just thinking about life, so Oscar asks her again to marry him and quit being a witch. She rejects him again, saying she doesn't know how to live normally, but Oscar suddenly pulls her in for a kiss, and she melts into it. She then calmly tells him that he shouldn't kiss her so suddenly, but Oscar says she can push him away if she doesn't like it. He then embraces her and pulls her in for another kiss, but this time she accepts it. Just before their lips touch, Lazar knocks on the door and asks Oscar to review some important documents. Before he can get to it, Tinashe notices something crashing into the city and reveals that the barrier is broken. As several demons raid the city, the Farce's mages come together to defend the civilians. When a demon reaches for Norman, Tinashe quickly takes action to save him, and this earns her some respect in his eyes. Tinashe then summons the spirits of Tuldar, and while they fight the demons, she summons rain to blow out the fire. Meanwhile, Oscar is fighting on the ground when he spots a maid struggling to get on her feet. When he reaches out for her, he suddenly feels immense pain in his heart, and the maid Adariah looms over him with an evil smile. Soon after, Tinashe spots him knocked out on the floor and rushes to his aid, only to see a poisonous needle stuck in his finger. Horrified, she immediately starts healing his body, but her spells fail. She then calls Lucrezia for help, saying she has stopped time in his body to stop the spread. But Lucrezia says Oscar is a lost cause, because no one has ever survived this poison. However, Tinashe refuses to give up just yet, and says her body is strong enough to hold this poison for a whole day. By poisoning herself, she can let her immune system create antibodies, which she will use to create an antidote. Lucrezia strictly forbids her from doing this because she will die, but that's why Tinashe wants her to help. Lucrezia refuses to help as it's too dangerous, but when Tinashe says Oscar's life is worth more, she agrees to do it. Later, as they prepare to poison her, Lucrezia warns her once again that she can die, so Tinashe asks her to erase Oscar's memories of her if that happens. However, Lucrezia says she will not do that because Oscar would deserve to live in pain till he dies if she dies saving his worthless life. She then injects Tinashe with the poison, and after some time, Oscar wakes up fully healed. He feels as if something is missing, but Lazar tells him it must be because he's been bedridden for so long. Later, Oscar holds the magical orb Tinashe gave him and asks Norman if he knows what happened before he fell ill. Norman instead asks him to find a wife, which instantly reminds him of Tinashe. He then finds her in a hidden room where Lucrezia reveals she tampered with his memories, and that the poison has spread throughout Tinashe's body. Although she is still alive, it does not make sense that she has not gone berserk, even after bearing such tremendous pain. Oscar then spots a wound on her body, and when he lifts the blanket, he sees her entire body covered in wounds courtesy of the poison. Saddened by her state, he embraces Tinashe. Soon after, she wakes up and immediately visits Oscar to let him know she is healed. He asks her to flash her melons as proof, but she refuses and calls him a hopeless idiot. He then asks how she sees him, and she says he's her contract holder, who is also important to him. This makes Oscar laugh, so she later asks the others for an explanation. Duwin tells her that she would never do such a thing for any other contractor, so she must ask herself what she really feels about Oscar. Reading a room, she asks them who here thinks she is in love with Oscar, and everyone raises their hand.
Yes! Yes! Yes!
She gets so annoyed that she breaks the table in half, so Lucrezia asks her to be more honest about her feelings, because she's been in love for a long time. Panicking, she teleports to Oscar's room and asks if what others said is true, and Oscar confirms it. She then falls into his arms, and with teary eyes, she says she is glad to have met him. Finally, she accepts her feelings and kisses Oscar, bringing him closer to Pound Town. After clapping all night, Tinashe realizes that it's now harder for her to use magic, so she will have to reconfigure. Oscar then says that once they marry, she will be granted royal privileges, but she says she is still not sure about marriage. Later, she learns that she will have to accompany Oscar to the New Year's festival at the Easter Temple. Suddenly, Leonora appears and reveals that 5 young boys from the Farce's castle city have appeared at the tower. Before they can enter, Tinashe teleports there and asks why they are here. Turns out, one of the boys named Say said it rains snow instead of water in the north, so they decided to ask the witch if that's true or not. Tinashe scolds them for coming so far without an adult because they could have been kidnapped by bandits. They argued that Oscar became strong by going out alone, But Tinashe corrects them that he had a lot of training before he was strong enough to wander. With that, she teleports the boys back to the city before casting a huge surveillance spell that will help her monitor everything. Later, Oscar asks why she doesn't want to get married, so she reminds him that he has a great deal of magic in his body, which was sealed at birth by a strong spell. She also possesses a great deal of magic inside her, so if she were to have a boy with him, he would certainly be a very strong mage. However, if she gives birth to a girl, she might become a witch as soon as she is born. In the case of a boy, he won't be able to cast spells despite having magic, as long as he wields Akashina, just like him. He then wonders if his parents knew about his magic, and Tinashe believes it was his mother, who must have asked someone to seal his magic. He asks if it's good to be born with magic, but Tinashe says it's the opposite, especially for royalty. However, Oscar says they are both royalty with magic, and they'd turned out fine. Tinashe then flies into his lap, and he tells her not to hate her powers because she has saved so many people by using them. She sadly admits she has also taken many lives, but Oscar says he is the same, and it is the path they have chosen. He adds that they can teach their child the value of life and the responsibility of power little by little, and that she should at least give it a try. Later, they both head to the Eastern Temple to celebrate the new year, and while raising a toast to the people, Oscar notices Tinashe standing alone at the very back. On their way home, they both notice a threat in the area, and Tinashe suddenly summons lightning to deal with it. After the evil person gets away, Tinashe notices Sei and his friends hiding in the woods. She scolds them for causing trouble again, but then invites them to come home with them. Sei asks how she knew they were hiding, and she says she has the ability to sense people. When it starts to rain, she uses a spell to turn it into snow so everyone can enjoy. After addressing the people together, the lovebirds return to the palace, where Oscar carries Tinashe in his arms. She then calmly asks for some more time to think about marriage, and he agrees to wait. Elsewhere, the witch Leonora learns from her spy that her magic has changed, making her wonder if she got her cookie tasted by a man. She calls her reckless for giving in to her desires and tells the spy to find an opening so they can enter. The next day, Leonora informs Oscar about a festival in Gandona, but Oscar is more focused on the trouble brewing in Yarda. Since he must attend, he decides to take Tinsha as her bodyguard, along with Panura and Sylvia. Oscar asks her to seek help in dressing up because she's a fashion disaster, but she says she doesn't need help. When Leonora reminds him that she is Oscar's fiancée in public eyes, she starts to panic, so Oscar lets her off the hook. Later, she casts a protective spell around him and tells him to call her name if he gets in trouble. At the festival, while she watches from a distance, a demon named Travis shows up and starts talking with her in a cryptic manner. She asks why he's here, and Travis reveals he's now become a duke in this country. When he sees Tinashe looking at Oscar with hard eyes, he says she has grown soft and can easily be ended. Tinashe tells the man to test his luck, but just then, her fiancée, named Aurelia, shows up and starts scolding him. After Tinashe introduces herself, Aurelia realizes she's Oscar's fiancée, only for Travis to say that she's a witch and is scared to have kids. Aurelia feels sad about Tinashe's situation and encourages her to let go of her fears, because she believes in her heart that their child will be born to share in both the good and the bad. She then realizes she said too much and leaves, only for Tinashe to reflect on her words. Later, as Tinashe shampoos Oscar's hair, he reveals that the Princess of Yarda has gone missing near the Gandona border, and this has led to a lot of tension between the two nations. He then pulls her into the tub and asks why she was talking to another man during the ceremony, especially because he has a demonic aura. Tinashe confirms that Travis is a demon king, but she is impressed that Oscar was able to tell. She also reveals that Travis has his eyes set on him, so he should stay away unless he prefers sausages over cookies.
Whoa, calm down, Jamal.
That night, the palace is attacked by demons, but Oscar is already prepared to face them. Soon after, Tinashe shows up in her nightsuit and blasts them all away. She then spots the culprit behind the attack and catches her, only to learn that she's Adaraya, the same mage who poisoned Oscar. When she asks who she is serving, Adaraya says no one, prompting Tinashe to finish her off. But just then, a mysterious person appears and escapes with her. Travis arrives as well to follow the mage and reveals that he tried to take Aurelia's life. The next day, Oscar learns that the Prime Minister of Gandora was assassinated, and some people think Tinashe is behind it. Tinashe obviously didn't do it, but she knows the person pulling the strings. She mentions Leonora, the witch who cannot be summoned, has previously fought both her and Travis, and now she is targeting their loved ones as revenge. She is currently residing in Yarda and has earned a favor with the prince. Usually, witches don't meddle with the empire, but Leonora loves working in the shadows and destroying nations. She is said to have put a whole castle in flames, and Oscar remembers reading about the Amber Castle in a book. Tinashe excitedly says she is off to eat Leonora, but Oscar strictly forbids her from leaving without permission. Alls asks what they should do next, and Oscar says they should look for the missing princess, as she might know something. Later, Tinashe sees a giant ball of sand in Yarda and informs Oscar that the missing princess is inside the storm, encapsulating the Kados fortress. She then teleports them all inside, where Oscar introduces himself to Princess Nefeli and her servants, Gate and Iosef. She welcomes them in and asks why the King of Pharsis has visited her, and he says it's because they share a common enemy. He then reveals that the woman who has manipulated the prince is actually a witch, much to Nefeli's horror. Tinashe believes that once Leonora learns she was here, she will arrive in no time, so they should start by removing the sandstorm around the castle. She also reveals she visited Yarda behind their back, and Oscar starts pressing her head for not listening to him. She then reveals that the civil war won't end even if they end Leonora, so she teleported most of the faction leaders outside the borders. Because the mages have had their powers sealed, and the army is out due to laxatives, she had to take measures. She also reveals that the king was poisoned, so she made sure to cure him and even had a conversation with Prince Savas, who seems to have acknowledged his mistake. She thinks she has done enough damage to piss Leonora off, so she will be here soon. That night, Oscar asks what happened when she fought Leonora once before, and she says she won. She then asks him to take care of a guy named Anai, who has absorbed a demon and has become much stronger. She then cups his face and says she won't forgive those who try to take him away from her. Oscar suddenly pins her down and locks lips with her, and even though she tells him to take it to the bedroom, Oscar decides to eat her cookie there and then. The next day, after the storm is cleared, Tinashe feels tired, so Oscar tells her to relax and come back when Leonora arrives. Meanwhile, Leonora is enraged that the storm was lifted, so she tells Anai that they are going to destroy Tinashe. As Tinashe is in the bath with Pamira, Princess Nefeli nervously joins her and immediately notices the love bites on her neck. Once Tinashe notices it, she uses magic to hide them, making Nefeli realize she is also a witch. She asks Tinashe if she plans to manipulate Oscar like Leonora did to her brother, but Tinashe calmly says that Oscar is a stubborn idiot who doesn't listen to a thing she says. She then asks Nefeli if she has a crush on Oscar, and her silence tells her everything. Tinashe realizes that Nefeli would have become the Queen of Pharsis if the witches hadn't interfered. It all started because the Witch of Silence cursed Oscar's family jewels, so he had to seek Tinashe out for a cure. Lucrezia got involved too, and now it's Leonora who wants revenge. She believes witches are dangerous and they ruin human lives, which is why she finds it so strange that a man treats her as human and refuses to let her go. Because of Oscar, Tinashe can feel proud of herself and stand before her own kind. Soon after, the demons start appearing around the fortress, and Tinashe joins Oscar on the front. She then ties a ribbon around his arm and tells him to pull on it when in danger, and his pain would be transferred to her. After a moment of silence, Oscar asks her if she would like to marry him after the war is over, and she finally says yes. Oscar and the others are all shocked that she finally agreed, and she tells them they must not lose. Then, they ride the dragon into the battlefield, and as soon as Tinashe spots Leonora, she rushes to fight her. She then tells her that her man will take care of Anai, but Leonora calls her a hoe for getting freaky with another man. In response, Tinashe says it helped her reorganize her spells and that she will live however she wants. She then creates a magical bow and strikes Leonora's heart, only to realize she'll need more juice in the tank to take her out. Meanwhile, Oscar takes Anai to the ground and amputates his gooning arm, but he blocks the sword with his other hand and regrows a scythe from the cut. Before they can fight again, Leonora decides to show Tinashe what a real witch can do if she has her V card intact. She splits open the ground and pulls out a giant crystal, and Tinashe sees the Amber Castle inside, much to her shock. When Tinashe discovers that humans are also caught inside the castle, she realizes Leonora's next objective is to seal the Kados fortress. She rushes to take her down, and they take their battle inside the castle. She even manages to corner Leonora, but right before she can finish her, the ribbon on her arm falls, and she realizes Oscar wouldn't want her to lose control. She decides to set aside her hatred for Leonora and agrees to beat her in a fair battle. On the other hand, Oscar continues her battle with Anai, but when he takes the ribbon off, Tinashe appears, followed by Leonora. They decide to battle in pairs, and Tinashe reveals to Oscar that Leonora can easily heal any injury, so they must end it fast. After a quick exchange, Tinashe distracts her just enough for Oscar to stab her with a cassia. which locks her back and stops her from healing. Tinashe uses this opportunity to strike Unai down, and by switching places, they manage to defeat both of them. Following that, the Ember Castle and the demons both disappear, and Jon Snow and Daenerys arrive on their dragon. After the battle ends, Travis appears and promises never to harm Ferris as long as Tinashe's blood runs in them. As they return home, everyone comes outside to watch Tinashe become Oscar's bride. On the way, she runs into Say, who promises to become strong when he grows up so he can protect her. And in the crowd, she spots Lavinia, the Witch of Silence, who telepathically tells her she means no harm and only came to see her. Later, the two of them get married at the cathedral, and after sharing a laugh about how many times she rejected him, she finally admits that she is in love with him. A few days later, Oscar is helping Tinashe organize her shelves in the tower when he spots a box covered in blood. He opens it to discover a bloody pendant inside, and the name 80 is engraved on it, which reminds him of the pain Tinashe went through. He also spots a blue orb nearby, but can't remember where he saw it before. Just then, the orb starts to glow, and before Tinashe can get there, Oscar disappears in front of her eyes. He then reappears in the exact same area, although there is no tower here. Realizing he's gone back in time, he sneaks into Tinashe's room, and she immediately attacks him because she doesn't know him in the past. However, he calmly subdues her and tells her he means no harm. After she calms down, he tells her he's her future husband and has come here to help. After he explains that he came from 400 years in the future and wants to go back, she says there is not much she can do to send him back. However, when she sees the hopelessness on his face, she tells him he can stay here until she finds a way. He then gives her a head pat, but she tells him to keep his expectations low, because she isn't sure if it's even possible. When he notices that she's sleepy, he decides to sleep in an empty room, but she asks him to stay here as she doesn't take up a lot of space anyway. Oscar then tucks her to bed, and the next day, he wakes up to a well-made breakfast. Tinashe says she can be assassinated anytime as a queen candidate, so she learned to take care of herself. When Oscar tastes her tea, he remembers the first time he met her and realizes she had perfected it from a young age. When he asks about her birthday, she says it is in 6 months, and Oscar wishes he could stay in this world and prevent her from becoming a witch. Later, while he figures out where he saw that orb before, Tinashe notices his sword and tries a spell on it, only for the spell to break. Oscar then remembers he saw a similar red orb in the Farce's treasury, but it was brought there by his mother, who would be born centuries later. He tells Tinashe that the orb he had was blue, and it came from Toldar, but she says she can't get in there without the king's permission. She then notices a delicate curse and a blessing on his body, and asks for his permission to test his blood for research later. Oscar agrees on the condition that she lets him teach her how to use a sword, and after a spar match, she does research on his blood. For the next few days, they continue to get along until Tinashe becomes friends with Nark. Oscar tells her she's the one who gave it to him in the first place, so Nark must be familiar with her scent. She asks him what kind of person she is in the future, and he says she's a fine lady. She then remembers that Lann is supposed to visit her tonight, so she meets him later, and he gives her a pendant before leaving again. After he leaves, Oscar tells Tinashe not to trust Lann, but she says he's the only family she has. She starts crying, saying she will be all alone without him, but Oscar hugs her and lets her confront her feelings. She breaks down, admitting she misses her parents and she feels lonely, so she is putting through this in hopes that it will get better when she grows up. As she bawls her eyes out, Oscar assures her that she won't be alone in the future because he will find her again. The next day, Tinashe wakes up and tells him she can get access to the treasure using Lann. Later, she returns to her room and eagerly tells Oscar that there is indeed a blue orb in the treasury. She couldn't take it with her, so she made sure to tamper with the alarm spells so he could walk in by himself. That night, before he leaves, she asks him if she will marry him in the future, and Oscar tells him it will happen 400 years later. He also advises her to stay away from Lann, and after he walks away, she begins feeling lonely again. She rushes to the door to see Oscar again, only to find Lann outside his room. Meanwhile, Oscar finds the blue orb inside the treasury, but asks himself if he should really prevent Tinashe from becoming a witch, even though she becomes happy later down the line. Before he can make a decision, the orb starts to glow, and he seemingly vanishes again. But when the time comes for Tinashe to become a witch, Oscar appears again and protects her from Lann. Although confused, Tinashe decides to trust Oscar, and he ends up ruining Lann's entire plan. Once Tinashe realizes his true purpose, she decides to take Lann on, but the man stabs himself instead to summon the dark power. However, his body is not stable enough to tolerate this much power, so he ends up dead. The dark power lingers and aims to destroy the whole country. So Oscar tells Tinashe she is the only one who can stop it. With Oscar's support, she manages to get a hold of it, and she later wakes up in his arms. Oscar then kisses her and explains the sad reality to her that she won't be able to see him ever again. He explains that once someone goes back in time to change the past, the whole timeline gets messed up, and there is a very high chance that they won't exist in the future. He knew that doing this would erase him from the world, but he wanted to hold her hand during the most difficult time in her life and save her from 400 years of suffering. He says he does not regret it and embraces her, telling her to be a good queen. As she breaks down in his arms, he tells her that even though he will disappear, his love for her will always remain. She begs him not to leave her, but Oscar gently tells her to close her eyes. Soon after, Oscar disappears from her sight, and she spends the entire night bawling her eyes out. Did you like this sad ending? Or would you have liked to see Oscar and Tinashe live happily ever after? Let us know in the comments. Leave a like if you enjoyed, and subscribe if you want to see more romance anime in the future.